volume of water, rainwater, has increased after the construction of the interchange, which directed the water to the densely populated areas in Kivumbini ward, hence causing death and destructions of property. That so far there has been no information from the relevant authority on whether a connecting road which will be constructed to drain and drainage improved to redirect the water away from the interchange. That efforts to have the matter raised in this petition addressed by the Kenya National Highway Authority, the Kenya Urban Roads Authority, and the Kenya Railways have not yielded any fruit. That the issue in respect of which this petition is made are not pending in any court of law, constitutional or legal body. Therefore, your humble petitioners pray that the National Assembly, through the Departmental Committee of Transport, Public Works and Housing, intervene and recommends to the Ministry of Transport, Public Works and Housing and other relevant agencies to revisit the design with a view to resolve destructive drainage problems. 2, recommend to the Ministry of Transport, Public Works and Housing, the relevant government agency, to assess the damages caused to residents by waters and have affected families during duly compensated. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, make any other recommendation it may deem fit in the circumstances of the petition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Petition is referred to the Departmental Committee on Transport and Public Works and Housing. The other petition is by the member for Mukurweini, the Honorable Anthony Githiaka, for a second time. For a second time, before we move out of that order, member for Mukurweini. Member absent, not desiring to be present. The matter is deferred. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Leader of the majority party? Or majority whip?
The whip.
Honorable Speaker, on behalf of the leader of majority party, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, May 8th, 2019, afternoon sitting. 1, the engineer's rules 2019 and the explanatory memorandum. 2, the report of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2018 and the certificates therein. 1, Commodities Fund. 2, Pyrethrum Processing Company of Kenya. 3, Pest Control Products Board. 4, Railway Development Levy Fund, operations account. 5, Civil Servants Housing Scheme Fund. 6, Ministry of Tourism. 7, State Department for Investment and Industry. 8, Tana Water Services Board. 9, Department of Transport. 10, State Department of Housing and Urban Development. 11, State Department of Infrastructure, vote 1091. And 12, State Department of National Resources, vote 1106. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, Leader.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, May 8th, 2019, report of the Mediation Committee on the Warehouse Receipt System Bill, Senate Bill number 10 of 2017. Give it to me, Melissa.
Next order. Sorry. Chairperson, Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, Honorable Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, May 8th, 2019. The report of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs on its consideration of the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment Bill, National Bill number 21 of 2019, Volume 1. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, May 8th, 2019. Consolidated reports on consideration of the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment Bill 2019, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2019 by the following departmental committees. 1, Administration and National Security. 2, Environment and Natural Resources. 3, Finance and National Planning. And finally, 4th, Sports, Culture, and Tourism, Volume 2. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Leader majority, you chair and the one of the mediation, is it? Or you're tabling it now? It is the one you have tabled. Very well. Next order is next order. Next order.
Order number 7.
No,
Order number 6, notices of motion.
yeah, leader majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion that pursuant to the provision of Article 113, subsection 2 of the Constitution and Standing Order 150, this House adopts the report of the Mediation Committee on the Warehouse Receipts System Bill, Senate Bill number 10 of 2017, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 8th May 2019, and approves the mediated version of the Warehouse Receipt System Bill, Senate Bill number 10 of 2017.
Order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Member for Isiolo South constituency, Abdi Koropu Tepo. Member for Isiolo South constituency. Very well. Next question is by the member for Buri constituency, Mugambi Muruidania, Rindikiri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask the question number, Mr. Speaker, apologies. I'd like to number 024 of 2019 to the Cabinet Secretary for Health. Is the Cabinet Secretary aware that one Lone Kaburu Maingi of ID number 218955999 from Kiambogo area of Bore constituency was hospitalized at Nanyuki Teaching and Referral Hospital on the 22nd January 2019, and while receiving treatment at the said hospital, the patient was attacked and killed by another patient suffering from mental illness on the 25th January 2019. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide progress of investigations on the death of the patients, and what action is the ministry taking to ensure that such incidents do not reoccur? 3, could the Cabinet Secretary consider compensating the family of the deceased patient in view of the fact that his death was due to negligence? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
to be responded to before the Committee on Health. Next question, honour members, is by the member for Bumula, the Honourable Mwambu Mabonga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question number 211 of 2019 to the Cabinet Secretary, Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs. Is the Cabinet Secretary aware that the youth and the women from Bumula constituents who are engaged under the Youth Empowerment Program of National Youth Service are yet to be paid their services rendered during the financial year 2017-2018? But B of it is, when will the youth and the women who rendered these services under the program in the Bumula constituency be paid? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, to be responded to before the Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Honour members, the next question, being question number 220 by the member from Bonchari, is deferred at his request due to his inability to be present at this time. And he wrote a letter requesting that it be deferred. It's accordingly so ordered. Next question by the member, nominated member. I hear now nominated members are called specially elected. Specially elected member, Honorable Godfrey Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to ask question number 223 of 2019, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning. 1, what is the status of the lifestyle audit of public officers that was ordered in 2018, particularly for the heads of accounts and procurement departments in public institutions? 2, in reference to one above, what action has been taken so far on officers whose lifestyle audit raised queries, if any? 3, are there any plans to ensure that all state officers undergo the same audit in line with the Leadership and Integrity Act? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, to be responded to before the Departmental Committee on Finance and Planning. Next question is by the member for Kadiani, Honorable Mbui.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 225 of 2019 to the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning. Is the Cabinet Secretary aware that the parents and guardians of the victims and survivors of the Changuli fire that occurred in Changuli Secondary School are yet to be compensated despite the High Court ruling of 3rd of March 2016? And 2, what steps has the ministry taken to ensure that the parents and guardians are compensated? Mr. Speaker, the advice that made me bring this is because the committee dealt with the petition and said this may be an easier way by which they can be able to get answers for me. And that is why we brought it back as a question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
To be responded to before the Committee on Finance and National Planning. Now, members, for the second time, question number 023 by the member for Isiolo South constituency, the Honorable Abdi Koropu Tepo. Question by the member for Isiolo South constituency. I don't know what, but he had listed it as a question by private notice. Well, member being absent, not desiring to be present, the question is therefore dropped. Next order.
Order number 8, the National Cohesion and Integration Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2019, second reading. Question to be put.
Honourable members, debate on this bill was concluded earlier in the day, and what remained was a question to be put, which I hereby do, that the National Cohesion and Integration Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2019, be now read a second time. Member for South Imenti, you must be in Imenti. Let me repeat. The National Cohesion and Integration Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2019, be now read a second time. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to amend the National Cohesion and Integration Act 2008 and for connected purposes.
Honourable members, I wish to draw the attention of the House that, and I'm glad that a number of you did contribute to this bill, and because of its urgent nature, I have directed that the bill be put in the order paper for tomorrow to be considered by the committee of the whole House. So if any member desires to propose amendments to that bill in its current form, please prepare any proposed amendments so that they may be considered tomorrow. Next order.
Order number 9, procedural motion, extension of period for consideration of specified petitions.
Honorable Ali Wario, Chair of Committee on Labor and Social Welfare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I beg to move that, notwithstanding the provision of Standing Order 2272, Committee of Petitions, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the public petitions specified hereunder by the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare by further 60 days with effect from 8th of May 2019. The petitions are, Mr. Speaker, unfair dismissal of ex-Corporal Benjamin Chelagat by Kenya Defence Forces. Number 2, non-payment of terminal dues to former employees of African Safari Club. We asked for extensions, Mr. Speaker, simply because we wanted to meet more stakeholders and get more evidence on the same, Mr. Speaker. On the second petition, we resolved as a committee. We already met the Minister for Labor. We have met the petitioner. But we resolved as a committee we have to visit Mombasa to meet the ex-employees of African Safari Club to get more facts on the same. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will ask Mheshimiwa Songok to second me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Specially elected member 001.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And again, I wish to wish our brothers and sisters from the Muslim faith, I wish Ramadan Kareem. Honorable Speaker, this is surely a procedural motion, which of course, since we are going on recess, the committee sat here, we have met the CS, the PS of Defense, we have met the petitioner, and we would like to meet more stakeholders so that we can come up with a very conclusive report to this House. So, Honorable Speaker, I beg to second.
Did you say you beg to support? To second? The member who assumes he's in Kilifi. Obviously, you can walk majestically like that in Kilifi, but not here. Honourable members, I propose a question which is that notwithstanding the provision of Standing Order number 227, subsection 2, relating to Committee of Petitions, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the public petitions specified hereunder by the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare by a further period of 60 days with effect from 8th of May 2019. Petitions being unfair dismissal of ex-corporal Benjamin Chelanga by the Kenya Defense Forces and the non-payment of terminal dues to former employees of the African Safari Club. The desire of the House that I put the question. I therefore put the question that notwithstanding the provision standing on number 227, subsection 2, relating to Committee of Petitions, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the public petitions specified hereunder by the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare by a further period of 60 days with effect from 8th of May 2019. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it. And I think, honourable members, it is fair to announce that all those chairs of committees to whom petitions have been referred and for one reason or other may find it not possible to conclude consideration of those petitions within the initially specified period of 60 days. Since, as you know, the House will be proceeding on recess in accordance with the calendar, to consider bringing before the House such procedural motions, but of course, at all times, just like the chair of Labour has said, give reasons, because we don't want to just, the House doesn't want to extend for the sake of it. Be ready to give reasons as to why you are not able to conclude within the stipulated time of 60 days. We proceed to the next order.
Order number 10, procedural motion, resolution to hold a sitting on a specified Thursday morning.
Leader of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 30, subsection 3B, this House resolves to hold a morning sitting on Thursday, May 9th, 2019, commencing at 9:30 a.m. for purpose of considering priority business ahead of the May recess. Mr. Speaker, the House Business Committee that you chair, in its wisdom last night, felt that there are certain important committee and government bills and motions that needs to be concluded before we go for the long recess that will give our committees, departmental committees, to look at the budget estimates for 2019-2020. And part of the reasons why we have a morning sitting is even to consider that bill that you have just said it, the National Cohesion and National Cohesion Commission Amendment Act of 2019. And of course, the issue of the Division of Revenue Mediated Version, the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment Bill, if we don't finish today. So just for tidiness and to make sure that by the time we are leaving for this session tomorrow, then we have concluded business that are of priority to the nation and to the House. So I will ask the minority leader, who was also in the House Business Committee, to support me in that members need to wake up tomorrow early in the morning so that we are here at 9:30 and then finish the business by the afternoon session, all pending priority business that is before the House. I beg to move and ask Honorable Bandi to second.
Honorable Bandi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to second this procedural motion. Mr. Speaker, in yesterday's House Business Committee meeting, we actually agreed that since we are likely to proceed our recess from tomorrow, based on our calendar, all the way to 3rd of next month, that's a cumulative 3 weeks, I think, and during which time the Budget and Appropriations Committee, together with the departmental committees, will be considering budget estimates, that before we break, there's some urgent business that the 3 sittings we had of today morning, afternoon, and tomorrow afternoon would have not been sufficient enough So we request this House to allow an extra sitting tomorrow morning, and I hope that what happened this morning, where we had quorum without really necessarily ringing the quorum bell, will again obtain tomorrow, so that we do justice to some of the issues that will come up. More particularly, I can see the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee walking in. If we are able to discuss the Division of Revenue Bill, which has been referred from the Senate with amendments, and possibly we would be able to conclude this bill before the end of tomorrow, and any other issue that is outstanding. So, Mr. Speaker, it's my plea that this House supports the House Business Committee in its decision to have extra sitting tomorrow 9:30. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, I propose the question, which is that pursuant to the provision of standing order number 30, subsection 3, paragraph B, this House resolves to hold a morning sitting on Thursday, May 9th, 2019, commencing at 9:30 a.m. for purposes of considering priority business ahead of the May recess. Desire of the House, I put the question, which is that pursuant to the provision of standing order number 30, subsection 3, paragraph B of our standing orders, this House resolves to hold a morning sitting on Thursday, May 9, 2019, commencing at 9:30 a.m. for purposes of considering priority business ahead of the May recess. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it. I hope honour members, then you can rearrange your diaries, and especially what you normally do on Thursday mornings. So you have to still wake up a little earlier than normal to be here at 9:30 to consider what has been said to be priority business. Next order.
Order number 11, motion, Senate amendments to the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 11 of 2019.
Chair of Budget, are you ready to move?
Yes, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Senate amendments to the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 11 of 2019, be now considered. Honorable Speaker, the communication that was sent to your office from the Senate, Honorable Speaker, has a number of amendments that were proposed on the Division of Revenue Bill that we had adopted in this House and passed sometime before the short recess. Honorable Speaker, they have proposed a number of amendments. And instructively, Speaker, some of these relate to issues that had been canvassed by the Budget and Appropriations Committee and adopted by this House. For instance, Honorable Speaker, they have proposed an amendment on the leasing of medical equipment, the amount that we had provided for, and they are proposing to remove all that, Honorable Speaker. They have also proposed, Honorable Speaker, on the shareable revenue between the national, the vertical share of revenue between the national and the county governments, to increase from the proposed 310 billion by a further 25 billion to a figure of 335 billion 670 million. Honorable Speaker, among as many other amendments that they have proposed. Honorable Speaker, it's instructive to remind members that the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and indeed the National Assembly, being the House that has been charged by the Constitution that we passed in 2010 with appropriating our national resources, and has a vibrant Budget and Appropriations Committee that considers many of the proposals that come to the National Assembly and to Parliament, so to say, Mr. Speaker, we have an opportunity to holistically look at the fiscal framework of our country, Honorable Speaker. And when the Senate goes to make amendments that will have a very huge impact on the fiscal deficit that we have, we passed, and the budget policy statement that we passed in this House at the beginning of March, Honorable Speaker, proposals Honorable Speaker, that we also have an impact on the entire fiscal framework of the country and the economy, and they have not had the opportunity to interrogate issues that this House had the opportunity, even through the departmental committees, Honorable Speaker, to interrogate, then it leaves us in a very awkward situation, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, I want to urge the House that we do reject all these amendments that are proposed by the Senate. And we understand where the Senate is coming from, because they have a constitutional mandate to protect the counties. And they have a duty and a responsibility, Honorable Speaker, to protect the interests of the county. But the interests of the county, Honorable Speaker, cannot and should never override our national interests. When the Honorable Major Waluke sits in the Committee for Defense or the Committee for Internal Security, Honorable Speaker, there are huge national interest considerations that committee, be it that of national security and Honorable Koinange, or that of defense where the Major Waluke sits in. There are major national interests that they take into account in considering how much money to appropriate to those sectors of the national government that hold our national interests. And therefore, as much as we understand where the Senate is coming from, Honorable Speaker, I want to urge the House to reject in totality all these amendments, so that we may give both houses an opportunity to go into mediation and be able to reason together. Be able to reason together and be able to see what, in a give and take situation, Honorable Speaker, what we are able to give, what we are able to take back from them. And Honorable Speaker, I therefore urge the House to, in totality, reject all these amendments, and that will give us a second opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to sit with our colleagues in the Senate, not to fight, Honorable Speaker, but to reason together, because even the Holy Books tells us that if we reason together, I am certain we will be able to reason together with our colleagues in the Senate and be able to arrive at figures that will not distort the fiscal framework that we have and will not distort what we passed, even the budget ceilings that we passed in the budget policy statement, Honorable Speaker. And with that, Honorable Speaker, I want to ask the Honorable, I beg to move and plead with the members that they do agree with us that we reject all these amendments in totality. And I want to urge the Honorable, ask the Honorable Makali Mulu to second. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Makali Mulu.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to second this important motion. And even before I do that, Honorable Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to wish our Muslim brothers, during this time of Ramadan, I want to wish them well. Mr. Speaker, I get to the subject matter of this motion. What the Senate has done, as my able chair has said, is to disagree with the National Assembly in terms of the Division of Revenue Act. And they have proposed changes, Mr. Speaker, which we had not agreed as a budget committee and which were adopted by this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, looking at what the Senate has done, there's an amendment to Clause 5, Mr. Speaker, and Clause 5, Mr. Speaker, talks about in a situation where there's a shortfall in terms of revenue collection, that to that extent, the shortfall should be borne by the national government, but the person to determine the threshold will be the cabinet secretary. So what they are saying is, we need to delete the word cabinet secretary and replace with the regulations, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think we need to really be clear in terms of which regulations are we talking about here. Are they the Public Finance Management Act regulations? And if so, are they not static? Because I imagine it will be a dynamic situation, Mr. Speaker, and it will have to be reviewed based on every year and the collections of that particular year. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of moving the count equitable share from 310 to 335,670 millions, Mr. Speaker. Meaning they have increased, Mr. Speaker, the equitable share by 25,670,000, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we all agree as a House that counties need to be given more money. I think there is no dispute on that, Mr. Speaker. But the most important question, Mr. Speaker, is that you can't give counties money when you're not saying where this money will come from. So, Mr. Speaker, I would have wished to see a situation whereby the Senate says it increases amount, and they also tell us where the amount will come from so that we don't interfere with the budget deficit, Mr. Speaker. Because that amount, the percentage of budget deficit, Mr. Speaker, we didn't fix it when we were doing the division of revenue bill, when we were doing the normal budget, Mr. Speaker. So where they propose changes, it's a matter of saying remove from here and increase here. But I don't think that is coming out clear. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, while we have said many times in this House that the program of leasing medical equipment has its own challenges, where we need some audit to determine whether we are getting value for money, Mr. Speaker. But I think also in a situation, Mr. Speaker, where you delete the whole amount for a particular year, Mr. Speaker, then there could be some contractual issues. Because contracts have been signed, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure there are annual commitments. And we want to hear also, when they say reduce the amount to zero, then what happens, Mr. Speaker, to this contractual agreement, Mr. Speaker? So, Mr. Speaker, even as we discuss this, I want to urge the House, Mr. Speaker, to know that if we just pass these amendments the way they are, then we'll have serious issues in our hands in terms of how to balance the budget, considering the budget deficit. So what we need, Mr. Speaker, is to move forward is a situation where we are going to reject these amendments, and that will trigger a mediation process, Mr. Speaker, where we can then agree, the National Assembly and the Senate, and come to a figure which is agreeable to both houses, and a figure which will have factored in all the macroeconomic variables which are considered as we do our budget, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, we are likely to interfere with one area and then destabilize the macroeconomic variables. And those of us who are economists, Mr. Speaker, we know what happens when the macroeconomic variables are destabilized, because then they'll have serious implications to the economy, and this might come up with worse results as we expect, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I really want to urge the Senate and tell them that we all support increasing funding to the counties. But I think it must be done in a structured manner so that at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, we achieve our goals without destabilizing the economy. So with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the Honorable House to reject these amendments, and then we get to a mediation process. I second, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Honourable Member for Yatta. Honourable members, I propose the question, which is that the Senate amendments to the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 11 of 2019, be now considered. Do the Leader of Majority?
Speaker, this story of put the question, we are not here for that. If people are not prepared, they can... Yes, for those who are prepared. Mr. Speaker, Speaker, I totally support the committee and reject the Senate amendments to the Division of Revenue Bill. The Speaker, Article 203 of the Constitution, subsection 2 and 3 of the Constitution, provides that every financial year, the equitable share of revenue raised nationally shall be allocated to county government and shall not be less than 15% of the revenue collected by the national government and calculated on the basis of the last or the most recent audited accounts of revenue received and approved by the National Assembly. Why does the Constitution be very explicit, Mr. Speaker, Article 203? There must be a reason. And this provision, Mr. Speaker, was to ensure that allocation to counties are predictable. That's why it says not less than 15%. This tells you, this provision in the Constitution makes allocations to county governments to be very predictable, and that this is duly adhered to in the current Division of Revenue Bill that this House prepared. That one of 2019, and as approved by the House. which allocated a share that is 30% of the most recent audited and approved revenue. So in this division of revenue, we have gone above the 15% to 30%, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, number two, and which is fundamentally, and the Senate must listen to this. Mr. Speaker, the budget is not formulated in a vacuum. Both the total national budget, both the national budget for the executive, parliament, judiciary, and the county governments is not formulated in a vacuum, but is based on a framework that considers the current macroeconomic environment, the policy agenda of this current administration, which is the Jubilee government. So this government has an agenda. So the budget must be framed and formulated on the basis of what is the policy framework of that government in place. And above all, this House has approved, and the chair of budget is here sitting behind me, it has approved the 2019 budget policy statement. So everything that we do must be done within the confines of that budget policy statement approved by this House. Mr. Speaker, secondly, and more importantly, there was a rationalization of spending to fund the Big Four agenda. You know, enhancing food security, providing universal health care, supporting value addition, and above all, providing affordable housing for all Kenyans. The Speaker, is very interesting to note that whereas everyone knows that to achieve the universal health care goal, it requires investment in medical supplies, such as medicine, medical equipment, medical personnel. Yet the Senate, in this bill, the Senate has removed the conditional allocation on leasing of medical equipment. Are we reading from the same space, Mr. Speaker? The program of the medical equipment, the leasing program of the medical equipment, is a contract between the national and the suppliers. It's on a leasing. So when you remove the money, we expected the Senate to give us the way forward. What happens? What happens after you remove money? So, Mr. Speaker, and these are contractual obligations between the national government and the suppliers in various county hospitals. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the risk involved in counties is increasing. There's a lot of risk that is increasing in the counties, as reported by the Office of the Auditor General, and not every coin reaches the beneficiary. Speaker, it is not enough to justify misappropriation of funds, notion that the same is happening at the national government. That every time you raise there is misappropriation of funds in the counties, the only answer you get is that even the national government is misappropriating. I think as a House we need to make sure that both the national and county governments must account for each and every penny that they have. That you lose 1 shilling in the county, and if another person has lost another 3 shillings, both of them are culpable of an offense, and the Auditor General must raise that matter. Mr. Speaker, I think the route to go is mediation. And I'm sure the people who will be selected to mediate with the Senate must be prepared to face the Senate on 3 matters. One, on the increment. And the Speaker, there's an institution called IBEC, chaired by the Deputy President, that brings all county governors, that brings chairs of committees of Parliament, of the Senate, and the budget of this House, and they have agreed in principle that this is the amount. Now, the Senate has increased over 20 billion, I think, to the Division of Revenue bill. They need to tell us where that 20 billion will come from. Is it from which sector? Is it from CDF? Is it from the road infrastructure? You can't just increase 20 billion and you don't tell us where that 20 billion will come from. So, Mr. Speaker, my final remark is that I categorically reject the message on the Division of Revenue Bill 2019 from the Senate, and I urge my colleagues that we reject it and we send this bill to the mediation committee as provided for in Article 113 of the Constitution.
I did propose this actually debate now. The Honorable John Bundy.
Okay. You know, I am sorry, Mr. Speaker. Actually, I'm used to dually seconding these bills or moving. So
it was seconded by the Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to contribute to this motion, but I want to first move an amendment to the motion. I therefore move that the Senate amendments to the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 11 of 2019 be considered and rejected. Mr. Speaker, my reason for moving this amendment is to avoid any ambiguity, because if we go the way the motion is framed, then chances are that members may end up even approving the motion without knowing that they are approving the motion. We want to be clear that the National Assembly's intention is to reject the Senate proposal by Senate in terms of amendments. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, let me now explain why there is need to reject
Honorable John Bundy, I had approved your proposal to amend.
Yes.
Maybe somebody could second you, so that.
Then how do I then now proceed and contribute?
You know, this is an amendment.
Yes, okay, fine.
Then when you have not lost your
Mr.
right.
Speaker,
the Honorable Jared Okello.
Honorable says Marire.
Very well.
No, I'm the one choosing my second. I don't know why. I want Honorable Marire to second my amendment.
Honorable Marire. So, honourable members, I propose the amendment by the Honourable John Bundy, which is that the motion be amended to read as follows: that the Senate amendments to the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 11 of 2019, be now considered and rejected. Can I put the question? Can I put the question that the motion be amended so as to read that the Senate amendments to the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 11 of 2019, be now considered and rejected. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it. So the motion can now be debated as amended. Honorable John Bundy, proceed. Now contribute to the motion as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying that I still want to go back to where I was in 2013, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you'll remember, Mr. Speaker, in 2013, I had serious reservations as to whether Division of Revenue Bill should be dealt with in the two houses or it is a preserved function of the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, my reasoning then was drawn from Article 96 and 95 of the Constitution. If you read Article 95 of the Constitution on the functions of the National Assembly, it is clear that the National Assembly determines the allocation of national revenue between the levels of government. Between the levels of government as provided in Part 4 of Chapter 12 of the Constitution, meaning between national and county governments. When you go to Article 96 on the role of the Senate, it says there is no provision where it says that the Senate
shall determine the allocation of national revenue between the two levels of government. It just says that the Senate determines the allocation of national revenue among counties as provided in Article 217 and exercises oversight over national revenue allocated to the county government. Mr. Speaker, I know I was attacked that time. I was condemned in equal measure that I was trying to reduce the powers of the Senate. But Mr. Speaker, my argument was that if the people of Kenya wanted the revenue to be divided, the division of revenue between the two levels of government to be a function of the two houses, it was not difficult to put it under the two articles of the Constitution. It was very easy. You would have just started by putting, after you have put it under Article 1995, you again put the same function under Article 96. But, Mr. Speaker, we are where we are because of the advisory opinion from the Supreme Court, which I didn't agree with. Mr. Speaker, I think we need to draw parallels and learn from other jurisdictions. Other places where we have a presidential system, where we have bicameral system of government, how is revenue divided? I think that is critical. An important bill as division of revenue bill cannot be made an ordinary bill under Article 110 to 113 of the Constitution, because those articles envisages where a bill can be lost. How on earth would you allow a bill of this nature to be lost if we are a responsible country? Mr. Speaker, if the division of revenue bill would have been a function of the two houses, the Constitution would have classified it as a special bill under Article 110. And you go to the definition of special bills, you find county allocation of revenue bill is a special bill. And that is why, for this House to override the Senate, we have to garner 2/3. So clearly, the veto power is given to National Assembly with a very high threshold in that case. But now, Mr. Speaker, division of revenue bill, now after this advisory opinion of the Supreme Court, is made an ordinary bill, which has to go to mediation with that inherent risk of being lost. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I still want to register my frustration, Mr. Speaker, that we are now subjecting this important bill to discussion between the two houses. But I want to talk to the two amendments that the Senate has proposed. Mr. Speaker, the issue of the medical equipment is something that we pronounced ourselves on as a National Assembly last financial year. And I remember this House saying categorically that we had our doubts with this contract between the government and the providers of this equipment. In fact, Mr. Speaker, if you look at our reports, we felt that this issue, this thorough auditing. Mr. Speaker, how would have been happy if the Senate had looked into this matter, into details, and come up with a clear report on this matter. And even way forward, Mr. Speaker, it is not just a question of removing the budget. Removing the budget may be good, but so what next? Because when you remove the budget and those equipment are still at the counties, are we not going to breach contractual obligations? That is a question that this country must ask. And there is a possibility that these contractors, the people who had a contract between themselves and the government, may easily go to court and get a lot of payment from the government. So, Mr. Speaker, even as we consider that this is fraud, and I also agree with the Senate that this looks like a fraudulent arrangement, and we have said as much. But I want to ask the Senate, before we make a decision to take away these funds from this budget line, we need a clear report, that is detailing the kind of the arrangement we are in with these contractors, how this equipment, how much we have lost, and then once we deny the government money to pay for this equipment leasing, then how then do we proceed? Do we return the equipment, or what do we do? So that is something that the Senate needs to do. It is not just a populist step to take away the budget from that budget line. That, to me, is desirable. But what next? What do we do after removing the money from that budget line? Mr. Speaker, on the issue of money, I think the Senate has a point in terms of how much should go to counties. I think as the budget increases, as revenue increases, whether it is estimate or actual revenue, we need to start thinking of also giving counties more of this money. But Mr. Speaker, the problem we have found ourselves in is that we are shouldering the work of other organs of government. Mr. Speaker, there is an organ of government we call IBEC, the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council, which is chaired by the Deputy President. That is where the counties are represented, the governors are sitting there, their CECs are sitting there, the Senate is represented, National Assembly represented, the Treasury is represented. How come they cannot resolve the issue of how much to give to counties? Why do they give this burden to Parliament to deal with? Mr. Speaker, some of these institutions are abdicating their responsibility. There is also the summit chaired by the President. So, Mr. Speaker, in my view, it is late in the day, in my view, to start again amending how much to go to the counties. But again, Mr. Speaker, I think going forward, as we go to the mediation, because I see this going to the mediation, we need to agree with the Senate that the Parliament should not be made to shoulder the burden of IBEC. IBEC should perform its functions and conclude effectively so that there is smooth running of the budgetary process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the motion as amended.
What's your point of order, member for Kieni?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on standing order number 35. And going by the mood of the House, and also considering that we also have another opportunity to deal with this matter after the mediation, Mr. Speaker, can the mover be called to reply?
Yes.
Well, the honorable member for Kieni claims that going by some mood he has noticed in the House, that whether the mover may be called upon to reply. Very well, I see the member for community desirous of contributing. Let me just hear a few of you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we don't have a modometer in this House to measure the mood of the House. And this is a House of debate, Mr. Speaker. But now, Mr. Speaker, it is indeed important that you allow us to raise some of the issues that we have, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the process of the division of revenue, it goes through a serious process, Mr. Speaker. We have the CRA, the Commission of Revenue Allocation, Mr. Speaker. We have the IBEC, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, we've seen the budget has been going up. And, of course, when the budget goes up, Mr. Speaker, it goes without saying that the sharing amount should also go up. Mr. Speaker, I was just looking at Article 203 in particular, Mr. Speaker. It says, and this is D, as you do the division of revenue, Mr. Speaker, it says we should ensure that the county governments are able to perform their functions that are allocated to them. Mr. Speaker, as we are doing this, have we done any cost-benefit analysis to see whether the county government will be able to perform, Mr. Speaker? We know very well the county governments have a lot of pending bills. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that you are not given full details by the chair of budget, Mr. Speaker. We know there was a shortage deficit of 9 billion. Mr. Speaker, and the law is very clear, the PFM Act. When there is any shortage, Mr. Speaker, it's the national government to take responsibility, Mr. Speaker. But now, if we continue subtracting this money from the counties, Mr. Speaker, we are getting worried that the devolution might fail, Mr. Speaker. And it's still important, we should differentiate here money going to the counties and maybe the governors who are corrupt, Mr. Speaker. Any governor who might be corrupt in one way or another, he will face the law, Mr. Speaker. But that should not be the reason that we should subtract money from the counties, Mr. Speaker, to negate devolution. That is our big concern, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this matter came up in 2013. The matter went to the Supreme Court. There was a Supreme Court advisory, Mr. Speaker. And if you read Article 96 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, it clearly stipulates that the Senate plays a critical role in representing the counties and the county government. So to me, as an individual, I see that the Senate was in order, Mr. Speaker, to whatever they did. I don't want to differ with my leader here, because my leader was very passionate about this, and I remember very well in the last term, he was also very passionate. But when you interpret Article 96, it is clear, it says that the responsibility of the Senate, it represents the counties and their interests. It is in the Constitution. So what is the interest of the county government? This is what we should ask ourselves. One of the critical interests, Mr. Speaker, is more money to go to the counties so that devolution can work. Mr. Speaker, when you look at Schedule 4 of the Constitution, the functions that have been devolved, it's not proportionate to the amount of money they allocated. There are more functions, they are devolved to the counties. But the money that is allocated to the counties, Mr. Speaker, it's not proportionate, Mr. Speaker. And it is difficult when you go to other jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to division of revenue, dividing the revenue vertically. In other jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker, they base it on the budget. But here we are basing it on the audited accounts, which is about 2-3 years ago. And we are talking about the 2014, 2015, Mr. Speaker. So as we do this, Mr. Speaker, and as people will move to mediation, it is important. We should not throw away this baby, Mr. Speaker. Devolution is here to stay. Devolution has done very well. I'm aware that we have some governors who might be corrupt, and money, instead of going to the ground, it is going to people's pocket. We should not mix the two. My humble request, Mr. Speaker, we must debate with sobriety, Mr. Speaker. As we move to mediation, Mr. Speaker, those of you who will go to the mediation, we must look at this issue objectively and put devolution ahead of us. Because, Mr. Speaker, in my own opinion, I strongly feel, as by Article 96, the Senate has a role to defend the county governments. In other jurisdictions, in other areas, counties, Mr. Speaker, devolution has done very well. When you go to Kakamega County, Mr. Speaker, last time you were there, Governor Baranya has done very well. And we are calling upon other counties to go there and try to benchmark the other counties where money has been misappropriated.
That the Senate of Kenya has no power to make any law on its own without inclusion of the National Assembly. There's no bill. Even those ones which they are supposed to deal with, the ones that you know. They cannot do it. Even when they do that, they still must involve the National Assembly. That is because the Constitution itself is very clear, particularly 95 on the roles of the National Assembly. But of course, honourable members, we cannot, of course, fail to appreciate that they have referred the bill back to us. It's for us now to consider, and I think the amendment moved by the Honourable John Bandi is appropriate and timely. That we cannot just consider. Then what decision? What is our resolution? The resolution should be as proposed by the Honourable John Bandi, which was largely the substance of what even the mover, the chair of budget, did, and the seconder, the Honourable Makali Mulu. That after you consider, you reject. After which, then we'll kick in the provisions of Article 113. I can see there's still the member for Bomet Central, Honorable Tonui.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. For me also to add my voice on this, I want to make it clear that I do support the position of the Senate, 100%, because I believe as a House, we have never agreed on a position on this bill, because we are always embracing whatever is forwarded by the executive to this House without thorough scrutiny of the same. The idea of adding 20 billion to the counties under this division of revenue bill is quite welcome, because the key functions which we have in the constitutions are devolved. When it comes to the issue of water services, it is devolved. When it comes to the issue of water, it is devolved. The issue of access roads, it is devolved. The issue of agriculture is devolved. Those are the key functions which touch the common man, and I believe those would be the most well-funded. But when we have an issue where we have the resources remaining in the national government, especially in the Ministry of Health, when majority of those services are provided in the counties, because in the national government we only have, in terms of hospitals, we have about 4 hospitals to be funded with over 70 billion, which will let it lie idle in the Ministry of Health. That is why Ministry of Health is able to misuse it by even buying unnecessary items like the containers rotting in Mombasa, which has been there for 5 years. And here we are defending that, so that we have idle funds lying there. When it comes to the issue of leased medical equipment, I was in the 11th Parliament when we approved it. We were misled because we were fighting the court and the Jubilee. On this side, we couldn't be eyed, I believe, by the majority leader to ensure that we are in the House to defend the government position without even having read what it was in those things. And we were misled that it was going to be 95 million annually. How it has varied from that 95 million to where it is, 200 million, I fail to understand. The issue of leased equipments, I believe, originated from cartels, and cartels are benefiting from that. Even these companies who are the owners of these equipments, I don't even have an idea. I believe they are shadowy companies, and therefore the cartels are having this as simply a cash cow for them. And therefore, let us allow the counties to have their money, and these cartels and these companies who owns this equipment to negotiate directly with these companies, so that they can get the value for money, because there is that issue. I believe because we also have so many functions which are devolved, which the national government wants to usurp its roles. One of them is the housing, where we are imposing even the housing levy, when the whole issue of housing is a devolved function. Why is the national government trying to grab that function and pretend to be their key function? That one is provided for in the Constitution, that it is a county function. And we're even allocating lots of money to that one. We need to rethink all that. The issue of agriculture is devolved. Ministry of Agriculture, we are funding it, while we should channel all that money to the counties. All those, even universal health, which should be the priority to be emphasized on, is now even not properly taken care of. We are only talking of 4 counties having this universal health, while the others are not even experiencing. So I believe the issue of what the Senate has done is a noble idea. We should all support it, and we should not be seen as a National Assembly which specialize in rubber stamping what is forwarded by the executive to this House, because the whole of that bill is from the executive, and we're here to rubber stamp only, I believe, because we don't have a position. Thank you.
Honorable Jared Okello, unfortunately, I had already given you earlier on. Maybe you might wish to utilize to make a contribution. I know earlier on you had wanted to, or you just wanted to second the amendment.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would also, in the spirit of brotherhood, donate a minute to my brother, Honorable Otiende, with your permission. But, Mr. Speaker, I support the rejection of this bill. Going forward, both the Senate and the National Assembly must work in tandem for anything to be made into law. And just as you have said, Mr. Speaker, there is nothing that can come from the Senate without the approval of this House to see the light of the day. And therefore, it is incumbent upon the Senate to always work in unison with the National Assembly so that we do not just have cohesion within the two houses, but also ensure that every bill that comes from the Senate sees the light of day without due regard to any eventuality. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Otiende.
You know, there's no opportunity for honor members. I think the best thing is for me to gauge the mood now. Yeah? And the only way to do it is by putting the question to the vote, which is that the mover be called upon to reply. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as the contrary opinion say no? No. The ayes have it. Mover.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and let me just take this opportunity as I reply, Honorable Speaker, to thank the members who have contributed, including the member for Bomet Central, who had the only differing views, which we truly appreciate. And Honorable Speaker, it is important to note that even those like the Honorable Chris Wamalo and our leader of minority who are aspiring governors are indeed in agreement with us that as much as we want to support the counties, we must do it in a balanced way. And it is only fair that we offer ourselves and the Senate an opportunity to be able to sit and reason together in mediation. Honorable Speaker, as the leader of majority instructively said, we may getting ourselves into more problems if we now start interfering with the contractual agreements that are there between the counties, the government, and the providers of the managed equipment services, Honorable Speaker. And we must remember, Honorable Speaker, as has been said, that these are leased equipment. If you don't pay for the lease, equipment, Honorable Speaker, the only natural thing to happen is for the owners of this equipment, we have not bought this equipment, is for the owners of this equipment to go and get them from the counties, and we'll be subjecting the people in the counties to further suffering, Honorable Speaker, because they now need maybe to come and queue to Kenyatta, MTRH, and maybe Mombasa Provincial Hospital. And with that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to reply and again urge the members to reject this amendment from the Senate in totality to offer us that opportunity to go into mediation. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honor members, I put the question, which is the Senate amendments to the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 11 of 2019, be now considered and rejected. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as the contrary opinion say no? No. The ayes have it. That is very lukewarm. Honor members, I think. Honor members, then the result of that, therefore, is when you get, and the House gets to business appearing as under number 13, Roman 1 will not be considered. They will not be considered, and I will be making the necessary announcements as contemplated both in Article 113 and our standing order number 148. So we proceed to the next order.
Order number 12, motion, report of the Committee of the Whole House on the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendments number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 13 of 2018, question to be put.
Honourable members, when the House was considering the motion listed as number 13, Roman 2, at 6:30, as had been directed, the House and to be adjourned to discuss some business which had been proposed by the member for Kakamega County, the Honorable Elsie Muhanda. And therefore, For us to proceed, we have to put this question. I hope everybody is aware. The member for Emuhaya is. Therefore, I must put the question for us to proceed. I put the question that they say that this House do agree with the report of the Committee of the Whole House on its consideration of the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 13 of 2018, up to Section 94, Clause 4 of the provisions relating to Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act number 33 of 2015, and 6, leave to sit again. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 13, Committee of the Whole House.
Order members, we are in the Committee of the Whole House to consider the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill number. Please do so in order members, yes, so that we can get into the business. Very well, okay.
Section 98, subsection 1, Section 114, subsection 6, Section 117, and Section 119, subsection 1.
I propose a question which is that Section 98(1), Section 114(6), Section 117, Section 119(1) be amended as proposed in the bill. Members, we have no amendments to this, and neither have moved to put the question, which is that Section 98(1), Section 114(6), Section 117, Section 119(1) be amended as proposed in the bill. Will as many as of this say aye? Aye. And as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it, members.
Section 121.
I propose, yes, before I propose, can I call the mover? Chairman, Honorable Limo.
Honorable
yes.
Chair, I propose to move that Section 121(4) be amended as per the order paper. The reason for this, Madam Chair, is just to add the word entity after the word procuring, because in the amendment, the drafting was done in a way that is talking about procuring, but it had actually failed to include the word entity, just to read procuring entity. So it is just like a drafting error.
Very well. I propose a question which is Section 121 be amended as proposed by the mover. I move to put the question on members, which is that Section 121 be amended as proposed by the mover. As many as of the opinion say aye, and as many as contrary opinion say nay, the ayes have it.
Section 124, subsection 14.
We have an amendment. I call the mover again to move the amendment. Yes, as for our order paper, yes, we have no amendment to this. Honourable members, I propose a question which is that section 124.14 be amended as proposed in the bill. I move to put the question, which is that section 124.14 be amended as proposed in the bill. Will as many as are of the opinion say aye? And as many as are contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next.
Section 124, subsection 15.
We have an amendment by the chair. Please move the amendment on 124.15.
Madam Chair, this amendment to 124, subsection 15, I propose to withdraw because it was actually erroneously referring to subsection 14, which I have just jumped. And therefore, it was going to negate the objective of the bill. So I propose to withdraw it because it was not properly considered.
Very well. The chairperson is on record withdrawing, and I therefore treat it as we have no amendment to this. Honourable members, I propose a question which is that section 124.15 be amended as proposed in the bill. I move to put the question, which is that section 124.15 be amended as proposed in the bill. Will as many as of the opinion say aye? And as many as of contrary opinion say nay? Members, the ayes have it.
Section 124, subsection 16.
We have no amendment. I propose a question, which is that section 124.16 be amended as proposed in the bill. Following no amendment to this, I therefore move to put the question on the members, which is that section 124.16 be amended as proposed in the bill. Will as many as of the opinion say aye? And as many as of contrary opinion say nay? Members, the ayes have it.
Section 126, subsection 3.
We have an amendment by Honorable Millie Odhiambo to the section 126.3. Please, member, can you move the amendment?
Thank you, Chair. I propose the amendment as per the paper. Chair, the proposed amendment reduces the evaluation period to 7 days from 21 days. I think that is, the period is too short. And I therefore propose 14 days, which is similar to our previous amendment that we had already done. Thanks.
With that, important members, I propose a question which is that section 126.3 be amended as proposed by Honorable Millie Odhiambo. The leader of majority.
Chair, I support Honorable Millie Odhiambo that 7 days is too short for anything to be conducted, so we revert back to the 14 days. And also share with the friends that now we are dealing with the contractors. All the people have left. Everybody has left. Now, now we have contractors. So those of us who are let's be very careful.
Yeah, leader of majority, these are members of parliament. They no one who owns them. With that, I see no other interest by a member, and I move to put the question on members, which is that section 126 be amended as proposed by Honorable Millie Odhiambo. As many as are of the opinion say aye. All the members. Even the Millie Odhiambo, I cannot even hear your voice. Allow me put the question, which is that section 126.3 be amended as proposed by Honorable Millie Odhiambo. Will as many as are of the opinion say aye? And as many as are contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Section 135.3.
We have an amendment by, again, Honorable Millie Odhiambo. Please move your amendment to section 135.3.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to inform the leader of majority that I'm an aspiring contractor, but I'm not one currently, especially after I watched Governor Sonko yesterday, where he was showing that he has over 1,000 title deeds and over 100, what are this, logbooks
Chair, I discovered that I can actually be declared bankrupt going by so-called standards. I'm extremely poor.
The leader of majority is smiling. That is, you can inform him later. Please, can you move your amendment, Honorable Member Odhiambo?
Chair, thank you. I move my amendment that section 135(3) be amended as per the order paper. Chair, again, it's giving the contract period a very short time. It's reducing it to 7 days. But, Chair, because I can see, even because I've seen from what is even happening in our constituencies, sometimes those periods are very short. So I'm proposing that we retain it at 14 days, yes, not 7 days.
Very well, very well. With that input, honourable members, I propose a question, which is as section 135(3) be amended as proposed by Honourable Millie Odhiambo. I see no interest to this, and I, therefore, honourable members, move to put the question, which is that section 135(3) be amended as proposed by Honourable Millie Odhiambo. Will as many as are of the opinion say aye? Aye. And as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next.
Section 135, subsection 4, section 136, 1B, and section 138, 5.
Honourable members, I propose a question which is at section 135(4), section 136(1)B, and section 138(5) be amended as proposed in the bill. We got no amendments to this, and I therefore move to put the question, members, which is at section 135(4), section 136(1)B, and section 138(5) be amended as proposed in the bill. Will as many as of the opinion say aye? And as many as a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Section 139, subsection 4.
Yes, we have the mover, Honorable Limo, to move amendment 139(4).
Madam Chair, I propose to move an amendment to section 139(4) as per the order paper. The import of this amendment, Madam Chair, is actually to ensure that the timeline which is in the Act on variation of contracts, which is 12 months, remains, because the amendment in the bill is proposing to remove the timeline so that you can actually do a variation on contract any time. So we actually rejected that, and we are saying that the 12 months period for variation of contracts should remain.
Very well. I propose a question, members, which is at section 139(4) be amended as proposed by Honorable Limo, the Chairperson Finance. I move to put the question as a straightforward amendment, which is that section 139(4) be amended as proposed by the Honorable Limo. As many as are of the opinion say aye, and as many as of contrary opinion say nay. Members, the ayes have it. Next.
Section 167(1).
We have an amendment by Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. Please move the amendment on 167(1).
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chair, Section 167, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the amendment as proposed in the order paper on Section 167. Honorable Chair, this is a provision that gives an aggrieved party in a procurement process at least a minimum of 14 days, and the amendment as proposed was reducing that 14 days to a period of 7 days, Honorable Speaker. And what was envisaged in the Act is that bidders would have at least 14 days because notice ordinary served by, it must be written notices that are ordinarily posted by mail, postal addresses. And therefore, within 7 days, you may not even get people to get their mail within a period of 7 days. So I'm proposing that we revert to the 14 days that exist today. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, it's instructive to note that this is not the first time, Chair, that this was done, because the same proposal was done through Legal Notice 106 of 2013. But this House, recognizing the difficulty that bidders and contractors who are represented here, Honorable Speaker, as the leader of majority said, would be faced with, and the difficulty that public procurement oversight time to be able to prosecute issues. And it's all in pursuit of justice, Honorable Speaker, and fair arbitration of procurement issues. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Very well, very well. Members, I propose a question with that, which is that section 167(1) be amended as proposed by Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. it's a clear amendment. Honorable Member for Kitui Central, I see interest for you to speak to this.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I think from what Honorable Ichungwa is saying, it makes a lot of sense. 7 days might be too short. So I support the amendment so that we retain 14.
Very well.
I support.
Nikal, you want to speak to this? I've been seeing very well. I see no interest. Of course, it's a very straightforward amendment, and I therefore move to put the question on the members, which is that section 167(1) be amended as proposed by Honorable Kimani Ichungwa. As many as are of the opinion say aye, and as many as of contrary opinion say nay, the ayes have it. Next.
Section 167, 4B and new 5, Section 168, Section 169, and Section 172.
All members, I propose the question, which is at Section 167, 4B and new 5, Section 168, Section 169, and Section 172 be amended as proposed in the bill. My honorable members, we have no amendments to these sections, and I therefore move to put the question, which is at Section 167, 4B and new 5, Section 168, Section 169, and Section 172 be amended as proposed. Be amended as proposed in the bill. Will as many as of the bill say aye, and as many as of contrary opinion say nay, the ayes have it. Yes, Honorable Kajwan.
Madam Speaker, you are doing a very good job this evening, but we are also trying to follow with this new equipment called the e-system, which doesn't help much because it has the order paper, but it doesn't have the bills, and it doesn't have the parent act. So without those things, even when we are going I'm not so sure whether we are capable there. But I'm just saying, you know, the leader of majority is really trying to keep track with the legislation. And of course, in, for example, 167 4B, there is no proposed amendment. But when you consider the provision, the new provision, subsection 5, you know, these are some of the things which will pass us, and we may end up, although there is no amendment proposed, but it can be a disastrous law. You see, that the section shall not apply to tenderers reserved for women, youth, persons with disability, and other disadvantaged groups. This is all right because it is speaking to 10% which is paid on review. But now, when a section like this talks about other disadvantaged groups, now, you know, what are these other disadvantaged groups? This is the problem, because if we went slowly, probably the leader of majority would have done a further amendment, because this is really his bill, even though he has not put it in writing, but he could have suggested that we should have stopped at persons with disabilities. Now, when we talk about any other disadvantaged groups, we have now opened this thing to abuse. Anybody else, including me who comes from Suba, will be a disadvantaged group, including the member from Kikuyu is a very disadvantaged group, because in Kikuyu, Madam Speaker, they cannot speak fluent Luo as I do. Yeah.
Give me the mic. Very well, Honorable Kajwang, and I'm sure, I hope you do not have some difficulty in handling your.
Yes, we have, but I was just saying that we probably need to go.
All the members were trained. Are you okay with your system there?
I'm very digital, but the thing is the content. There is nothing here called, the bill is not here.
Yeah, because most of we are paperless.
The acts are not here. What is here is only the order paper.
We are paperless. And again, please, we already had our bite on those sections. And very well, you did say that we had no amendments to this, and we have already passed that. We had no proposed amendment. I'm sure if you had approached the leader of majority, with the knowledge you have, would have had proposed amendments if you had agreed in the order paper. But as of now, we have already done with it, It is on record that we have no amendments to such sections, and we already passed them. So let's continue.
Section 173C.
We have a proposed amendment now on section 173C. I'm sure Honorable Kajwang, you're following. Then by Honorable Ichungwa, you can move your amendment, and the members can prosecute it.
Honorable Chair, I beg to move that the proposed amendment on section 173C be done what? Be adopted as proposed in the order paper. Honorable Chair, this amendment seeks to delete section 173C of the Act, and this C gives the review board powers that if we take away from them, Honorable Speaker, we will see a lot of abuse by procuring entities. As stipulated in the Constitution that all our procurement process, Article 226 of our Constitution, should be fair, transparent, and accountable, Honorable Speaker. And this just speaks to that, those provisions of the Constitution that to ensure there is fairness, there is transparency, and there is accountability. Therefore, if we delete that particular provision in the Act, we will be seeing a situation where procuring officers, rather procurement entities and their accounting officers may abuse this process and disadvantage very deserving bidders, Honorable Speaker, and therefore urge the House to support the amendment.
Very well. It's a deletion. But other members, I propose a question, of course, with that input from the chair. I propose a question which is that section 173C be amended as proposed by Honorable Kimani Ichungwa. Let me give the first bite to Honorable Nikal Wambura, member for Seme.
Chair, I rise to support this, but when I look at all the amendments that I see, Chair, they are all tending to give the executive excessive powers. Like this particular one, Madam Chair, what it is doing is giving the accounting officer power to overrule the review board, while in the first place, the review was done because the accounting officer had done something that somebody was not happy with. How then can the board see it? And then afterward, the same officer whose decision was being reviewed is now countering that. And you see even the reducing the review time and all the...
Do paragraphs 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, and 4 be amended as proposed in the bill. Members, we have no amendments to these schedules, and I therefore move to put the question, which is at the first schedule, paragraph 3, the second schedule, paragraph 3, third schedule, paragraphs 2, paragraph 3, 1, paragraph 3, 2, and 4 be amended as proposed in the bill. Will as many as are of the opinion say aye? Aye. And as many as are contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it, members.
New sections. New section 55(1).
We have an amendment to the new section 55(1) by the chairperson finance, Honorable Molimo. Please move your amendment to this. What is that? What is great? Molimo, you are moving the second reading?
Yes, sorry, there was some obstruction here.
Is cross-referencing
yes.
issue. Honourable members, your new section 55(1). Members, I propose a question which is that new section 55(1) be now read a second time. Leader of majority, you want to contribute to this? You do understand. As we are new, I see no interest to this. And members are now moved to put the question, which is that new section 55(1) be now read a second time. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? And as many as of contrary opinion say nay? Members, the ayes have it. I propose a question that new section 55(1) be part of the bill. No interest to debate on this. And members, I move to put the question, which is that new section 55(1) be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? And as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next.
New section 87A.
We have a proposed amendment to this, of course, second time reading by the Honorable Moses Kuria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I want to move that new section 87A be read for a second time. The import of this section, Madam Chair, is to address the issue of prompt payments and the pending bills, and to require that the procuring entity pay successful tenderers 30 days from the day of receipt of invoices and certificates for women, youth, and persons.
To the Honorable. Let me hear Honorable Member for Honorable Ngungi Katanga before I go to Makali.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to disagree with what Honorable Ishunga has said. Even if you are to be paid interest, there must be a timeline when you are supposed to be paid. And currently in the market is 30 days. After 30 days and you are not paid, you start earning interest. Yeah. Of course, it depends on the contract, but Ishunga has only talked about you'll be paid interest. He has not talked about the time. Time we are not disagreeing, leader. We can, 45 days is okay. 60 days is very long. 45 days is agreeable. 60 days would be too long. 60 days is too long, 45 days is okay. Then from that time you can start earning interest.
Let me hear, as the mover is here, the owner of the amendment is here, I'm trying to listen from the members, and maybe he's also getting from the members, and it is him to make a decision whether to amend or not. Let me hear the member for, yes, Honorable Kajwang, yes, we can hear the member for Kitui, and then I come to Honorable Kajwang.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, this amendment by Honorable Collier is an important amendment to this country. But I think we need to look at it from a very objective perspective. The problem we are suffering, Honorable Chair, is that people work for the government or the county governments. And when it comes to payments, the government can take a whole year to pay. At times they take 2 years. And what is happening, through those kind of acts, the government is actually killing individuals and small-scale businesses. So I think that's what Honorable Kuria is trying to solve. So that the government is clear that once someone has delivered on a contract, you have either 90 days to pay, and if it's among the disadvantaged group, then you have 30, where the Honorable Duale is proposing to push it to 60. And I think Honorable Kuria is important you consider that request for 60, because it's going to help the economy. I think that might be too short, Honorable Speaker. But now, on the other side of this, let's now go to the other side of the coin. And this, to me, is what is critical. There are two things that are going to happen. The first thing, Honorable Chair, what this amendment does is that immediately after the 30 days or the 90 days are done, then you start paying interest. That implies all these pending debts will be converted to domestic debt. And that will have a serious impact on the public debt in this country. We are already grappling with the issue of public debt. So I think even as we think about this amendment, that's a serious implication to the economy. And it might actually be very serious. The other point, Honorable Chair, which is critical, the other side of the coin, it says, if then we pass this amendment, it will be a requirement that the public, the government, the national government and the county governments operate the way CDF operates. That by the time you procure, you must have money in the account. So that's another now serious, you need to analyze that. That if you don't have money in the account, then people who are procuring services will be hesitant to procure, because then it might go to beyond the 90 days and then it becomes a public debt. So I think the Treasury is in between a hard rock and I think generally, as an economist, I think Honorable Kuria might need to help us, because at the end of the day, this bill will affect the economy and it will affect Kenyans. And I think we really need seriously to think about how to navigate around those issues. But as I said, before I sit, Honorable Chair, The other important thing is the issue of, I'm pleading with honorable members. Honorable Korea, I'm pleading with you. The part on disadvantage, what is that last term? It says, my machine is, let me just, you are saying other disadvantaged groups. Please, if we can avoid that, because it opens doors for abuse. So you can just be specific. Women, youth, and persons with a disability. And you close it so that it's closed. You don't give the procuring entity chance to start debating who is this other disadvantaged person. And that will help this amendment.
Very
but
well.
generally, it's a good amendment and it could help the country.
Very well. Then Honorable Kajwang. Honorable Kajwang, I know that now the member, the courier is more convinced. And yes, Honorable Kajwang, give it to Kajwang.
Madam Chair,
Order, Honorable Ichungwa, order.
the order which I rise to seek from you arises from what my friend Honorable Chunga, member for Kikuyu, has just said. You know, you need to give us guidance. In fact, as I looked at the order paper, even before he rose, I saw that the office of the clerk had flagged it out, that these amendments are subject to Article 114. In fact, that the budget committee had pronounced itself to it. And now, Honorable Chungwa has informed us of the reservations of Treasury. And you know, the Article 114 is very mandatory in its terms, that then the amendment must be proceeded to only in accordance to the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury. So the intention of this amendment is good. But again, this dovetails to what we have been saying all along, that this is an amendment which should not come in a statute miscellaneous amendment. Why? Because we need to think through it. And I do not know what happened, Leader of Majority, through Chair, because I thought that there was that Prompt Actions Act had did the two amendments together to understand what Honorable Kuria is trying to do. Because it then says in the next amendment that then if for some reason you are unable to pay, you should give promissory notes. But his promissory notes is only acceptable by banks. Why is it only acceptable by banks? Why not insurances? Why not other institutions or even shopkeepers? Why shouldn't they accept the promissory notes? So it is so selective that I am unable to support it, although the intention is very clear.
Very well. Okay, noted. Honourable members, now this is, it's an amendment, it's an asset of the House through the Honourable Moses Kuria, and that's why I've given members, of course, to deliberate on the same. Honourable, let me hear the Leader of Majority, and then now we give to Honourable Kuria, which to hear. Yes, we
Chair,
can speak to the, let's hear from the Honourable.
Chair, I think we need to discuss this more, with your permission.
Yes.
But what Honorable TJ raised is important on 114. But the National Parliament cannot wait for the National Treasury. We don't work at their whims. They were given an opportunity, they could not make it, and then the Speaker made a ruling, and that's why it's even on the order paper after 114. So whatever letter Honorable Ichungwa is reading is not even physical. He's reading it from his phone, and it has not been received. No, but that is your phone. If it is here on the machine, fine. So I think that matter of Honorable TJ's. But Chair, I think, and I've agreed with Honorable Kuria, when the private sector, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, appeared before us in the leadership retreat, and most of you were here, they said payment period by government is estimated to be once in 24 months. Okay? In 24 months. But they said payment period by the private sector is estimated to be within 60 to 180 days. These are the standards. So it can be 30 days. So we really ask Honorable Kuria to move it in an amended form so that we care for everybody to 90 days, not even 60 days. To 90 days, then we are very comfortable, then we approve it. Because the problem we are facing in this country is not even the procuring entity, it's the releasing, it's the exchequer. You know, today, if a contractor has done a job with, for example, a KPC or Kenya Power or even a National Irrigation Board, the invoice will be there, all the process has been done, but they wait for close to 1 year for the exchequer, for National Treasury to release money. So we are punishing a procuring entity. I think we should deal with the National Treasury. Yes, even county governments. I think what they receive mainly is recurrent. Sometimes they don't receive even money for development. So how do they pay a contractor for money which they don't have? But as a legislature, we will agree with Honorable Kuria, we peg it at 90 days, so that after 90 days, then interest can accrue.
He will have to pronounce it himself. Thank you, Honorable Leader of Majority.
For payments to be done. And what is happening, by the way, at times, especially at the county level, they are even so selective in their payment. The group that suffers most are the disabled group, women and youth. So we are under obligation as a house to give fixed number of fixed number of days for these parties to make this payment. And I want to plead with the Honorable